let's go right to social media questions.
Sure.
At Positive Packs on Twitter, I recently read an article arguing for discarding the term committed suicide and say died by suicide instead. They claim committed suicide gives the stigma that the individual committed a crime and views them negatively. What are your thoughts?
I think that's very true. I think that there's so much stigma around people who are suffering, and somebody who has committed suicide, as they say, we like to say died by suicide because that's how they died. They didn't commit a crime. They were just in intense pain.
Well, and I have very strong feelings about this because I am an advocate. I call myself, I'm part of the group called Suicide Survivors, which actually means having lost someone.
Yes.
To suicide. I'm on the board, like I said, of a suicide prevention center. I don't have a problem with committed suicide. It's someone pointed out to me that when you say, "Oh, I've lost a parent," you didn't misplace
They're not
them.
lost, right?
You didn't
we know
misplace
exactly
them.
where that parent is, right?
So why is there this big push to say died by suicide?
Because I don't think died is a euphemism. Lost is a euphemism. You've lost them. Where is it? Like an earring? Where did it go? That's not like this. This is the person died. That is how they died. Somebody dies by cancer. They didn't commit cancer, right? And I think it takes I think the family feels a lot of shame and stigma too.
Which
survivors do.
We have our big benefit of erasing the stigma.
Right, and so I think that's part of it, is making sure that the language doesn't leave the family also feeling like there's some shame or stigma around what happened. It's a tragedy.
Right. Mark Miller on Facebook asks, what are the biggest mistakes a patient makes in therapy?
I think worrying about making mistakes is probably the biggest mistake that they made, that you just have to be yourself in the room.
Michael King on Facebook, how do you know when you're ready to see a therapist?
I think if you're wondering, you're probably ready.
Really?
Yeah.
So when people come to you, how do they sort of just go like, well, I've been thinking, maybe. How do you reassure them that they've made the right decision?
Well, they might not have, and that's okay. We're not going to keep them there if they don't need to be there. So if someone says, hey, here's what's going on in my life, and we talk about it, and it turns out that there's nothing that they really need to work through, then they don't need to be there.
Who are these people?
Usually when people come, they have something to talk about.
Right, I was going to say, who are these people that have nothing to discuss?
Right.
Janice Mcdonald on the Larry King Now blog asks, a recent study showed the rate of teen suicide went up after the premiere of the show 13 Reasons Why. Do you think media today is affecting our mental health more so than ever before?
I think sometimes it is. I think that it's good that people are talking about suicide in that case, in 13 Reasons Why. But I also think that there are copycats. I think sometimes kids are too young to understand it or to really know that, you know, the difference between fiction and reality.
I mean, my problem with that show was it makes suicide an option.
Yeah, I think that the problem is people think that if you bring up suicide that it's going to plant the idea in someone's head, and it won't. You know, not talking about suicide is more dangerous than talking about it.
But I think once we see it on a TV show,
I think it glamorizes it in some way, and that's
which is the word I didn't want to use, and that's what I'm saying is suddenly it becomes an acceptable option.
Right, right. But I think for kids who are suffering, if they're depressed or they're anxious, saying to them, are you thinking of hurting yourself? You know, are you thinking of killing yourself? You might not use that exact language, but bringing it up opens up a space for them to talk about some feelings that they might not otherwise tell people, and then they might go ahead and do something harmful to themselves because nobody asked, because they were afraid to.
Never miss a beat. Subscribe to Larry King Now and watch new episodes every day.